Well, hello everybody out there on YouTube. Hi, I am back. Today is episode 8 of the Junket Folder. I cannot believe that we are finally on episode 8. We're almost in double digits. I actually thought we were on episode 9, but I got it wrong. But it's okay because we're still here, we're still up and running. I did have to take a little bit of a hiatus just because this crazy thing called life got in the way, and I was just really busy with coursework, my job, just a bunch of things. I did a lot of work for the BBC recently, so that was exciting, and I'm sure towards the end of the year I'll have a video up about that, hopefully. If you're new to my channel, hi, how are you? My name is Charlotte Gilgallen and I am a Scottish vlogger from Glasgow. Don't know why I was confused by that there. Yes, that is what I am. I'm also a contributor for BBC Social, a comedy platform running in Scotland. I'll leave links to that down below. And feel free to subscribe to this channel if you like what you see today. I have some really exciting guests on my show today, you guys. I finally was able to get an interview with one of my favourite podcasts ever. I actually discovered this podcast early of this year, I believe, because I followed a hashtag on Instagram. I was able to find this podcast, and I just, as soon as I saw it was on Instagram, I shamelessly messaged them and said, could I please come on your show, or could you please come on my show? I just really want to network with you guys. And they were super kind and they said yes. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to Carla and Daniel from the Brendan Fraser podcast.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. How are you guys today?
So good.
Tired. A little tired though.
Could you just tell me and the audience a little bit about who you guys are and what you guys do?
Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Sure, why not? Well, I'm Daniel. I co-host the Brendan Fraser podcast, where we try to highlight everything Brendan Fraser related. Mostly each episode is a different film we talk about, or we've talked about Doom Patrol occasionally. Yeah, we just love Brendan Fraser, and it's been amazing meeting so many new people, responses from people, comments, emails. A lot of people love Brendan Fraser. And I think, we started the podcast in early 2018, so it's been about 3.5 years, and it's been great because right now we're at such a great moment for Brendan Fraser fans, like so many new projects coming up, and just, yeah, we just love talking to Brendan Fraser fans. I don't know, that's my take on it. Carla, what would you say about the Brendan Fraser podcast?
I mean, it's been a good ride. I mean, like we started in 2018, and then I think towards last year to up to this year, it's been taken off pretty well. Again, it's really united like all Brendan Fraser fans for sure. Like from all ages too. Like some people have recently discovered him, or even older fans like us, who've been like on track of his career and everything like that. So yeah, no, it's been pretty awesome.
That is amazing. And I just want to virtually welcome you both to Scotland. Your podcast has made it across the pond. And yeah, that it's such a fun podcast, honestly. I was never a podcast listener up until about 3 years ago. And I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan. For those who don't know, it's a show that was on the WB, and it's just like a really nice autumnal show. And I listened to a podcast called the Gilmore Guys podcast, and it was through looking at their page that someone had left a comment about they'd left the hashtag Brendan Fraser, and I thought, oh, I don't actually follow that hashtag, I probably should. And then that's the rabbit hole as to how I found your podcast, and I thought, I'm such an idiot, why didn't I look for something like this before? And I listened to the first episode before I was actually due to go to work. I was like, I'll just listen to one, and then I just ended up binging like every episode that you guys did, and I had to tell myself, no, like try and savor it because you're enjoying it so much, you don't want it to be over. And then it was over, and I was like, oh man, this sucks. I just love everything you guys talk about. You talk about everything to do with his films in such depth and detail, and I can tell you guys are genuinely doing this because you admire his work so much, and I think that's why I was so drawn to your podcast.
Well, thank you. That's a pretty big compliment. Like hearing somebody say they listen to all of them. I mean, that's amazing. It makes
That warms my heart.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, it also makes me want to apologize for not having more episodes, because we obviously set a goal to be doing more than just one episode every few months. But yeah, like you said, life gets in the way of some things, and it's not as, because I edit the podcast. I try and like include like clips from the movie or take out some of the ums because I say quite a bit.
Same. I say it all the
Yeah.
time on my YouTube videos. I have to consistently edit out every and I've been asked by a friend if I could do a supercut of all of them, and I really don't want to be a meme, so I've said no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, if you put all the ums together, it'd be probably a few minutes. Ideally, we can get more episodes out, but you know, I'm glad that we have what we do have out, and we have a new one coming up soon. So hopefully, we can get more on track in 2022. We'll see.
That's awesome. And I think that's good for listeners to the podcast maybe to watch this interview so that they can see that you guys aren't actually together. You guys are in different states. So that adds to the problem of trying to record episodes because you aren't always together. And, you know, you both work. And I'm not sure about time zones and stuff. I don't know if there's like a delay depending on where you guys are in America.
We're in the same.
Yeah, we're in the same time zone, so which is really great because otherwise would be like, okay, this is the time that we'll probably meet. But no, we're in the same time zone, so it works out best that way.
It works out good. Okay, so I kind of had like a pre-question before I get into all of the questions. There I'm saying my ums again. Oh my gosh, this is the worst. I need to figure out something else to say. So yeah, I have a pre-question for you guys before we get started on your questions. I already know the correct answer to this, and I think you guys know what I'm going to ask you. Is it Fraser or Frasier?
Okay.
No.
So I pretty much have been called out on how I say it because I say it both ways, and I think it was an interview that we both saw on how he pronounces his name, and it's actually Fraser, kind of like razor, but I still say it both ways, and I know people probably hate me for saying it that way, but he does. I mean, like in an interview, he said that he's not, you know, he's okay with both, but he corrected it the way that it should be said. So
Yeah, I grew up saying Frasier, and that's like I always knew Frasier. That's what I've always said. So Fraser was kind of new, and you don't want to mess it up because people get upset.
yes, they do.
Yeah, I think the last few episodes you guys did of the podcast, you guys have been saying it the way that it is, you know, supposed to be pronounced and stuff. But because I've grown up in Scotland and Fraser is a Scottish name, it's just something that a lot of Scottish people here never even think to say. Like I've never met any of my friends or anything when we gather around and kind of talk about him. That's always the thing that comes up is how do you pronounce his name? And it's like there's no I. When you say Frasier, I instantly think of Kelsey Grammer, and I've never seen that show, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But that I think you're totally right. He doesn't mind how it's said. I think he's very wholesome like that. He's just like, yeah, people say Fraser or Frasier. It doesn't matter. My feelings aren't hurt. So I think that's a really nice like little quality that he has. And I also think it's kind of funny that it's a question that divides fans all over the world about this guy's name.
Well, yeah, because like just like everyday people, like I hear Frasier all the time, and that's just like I want to say Frasier. I was like in my brain to correct myself, Fraser, like razor, because that video really cleared it up for me. But I don't know.
Were you gonna say something, Carla?
Yeah, like I mean, I still say Frasier. I mean, like that's kind of like how I grew up saying it. So, but I mean, again, we've been called out on how we say it. So we try our best to say it correctly. So, yeah.
Yeah, our listeners let us know if we make mistakes. They love it.
All right, so I guess the first thing I really just want to know is how did this podcast start? How did it even, what was the brainchild for this podcast?
Okay, so me and Daniel met on Twitter, like what was it, 2017? Like through a mutual friend. And so I don't know, I made like a post about a movie, and then we just started talking about movies. And then we're like, I think we saw the article of Brandon of how and like why he like, you know, got removed himself from the spotlight and stuff like that. And we were like, you know, he has some amazing movies, like movies that we grew up with. So why not? Why not Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I joined Twitter in, I think it was 2017. I'm a diehard Jurassic Park fan. So that's like the reason I was on Twitter, following the Jurassic Park podcast, which was like my first intro to podcast at all. I never knew what they were, never listened to one until like 2017. So that was like, took me to Twitter. And it's amazing to meet like people in the Jurassic Park community. Then you branch off to like who they're talking to or their friends are in movies. Like there's really a community of people that just like love movies. And I had never made a podcast before. I went to school for video production, so a little bit of audio experience, but not much. And I was like, always wanted to do a podcast. Well, for like the last year, since 2017. Yeah, and I think the GQ article kind of like made it pretty clear, like reminding me at least like my love for Brendan Fraser, because you don't really, I grew up, watching his The Mummy, all like his classic films. That to me, like if he's not in a major film for years, I don't notice it because I still watch like George of the Jungle. You know what I mean? So when I read the article, it's kind of like a wake up to like, oh, wait a second, like Brendan Fraser, like there's got to be a lot of fans out there. Like he needs some support. I love him. Um, yeah, that's how it came about, I guess.
I think that's the GQ article. And I don't want to touch too much on this because it's quite a tough subject matter to even speak about. But I remember when the article came out, to say I was shocked that an article about him was done. I wasn't. I watch his movies like all the time, and then when I went to college to study acting, I really delved into films of his that I personally never would have watched, but then I figured, as an actor, I probably should watch these just to kind of, see the, how he can expand on his roles and the range that he's got. So then when the article came out, I was right in the midst of all of that. So I was like, wow, that's such a big coincidence because there's someone that I thought, well, I've only seen like 5 of his films, I should probably watch more. And then this article came out and then Twitter just blew up and everyone was like, oh my God, yeah, I totally forgot all about this guy. And I had never really forgot all about him. I just kind of thought maybe he's retired or maybe because he was injured so bad on The Mummy 3, maybe he just thought I have to take a break for a while. But never in my wildest dreams would I have hoped that something like that would ever have happened to someone like him. It shouldn't happen to anybody, but I think because I'm such a huge fan of his, to hear about that happening, it really just, it broke my heart. It just took over my entire day, and I just thought, oh my God, it makes sense. Of course he's going to take a step back after something like that happens.
No, yeah, absolutely. When we read the article, I mean, it was pretty shocking and like it was heartbreaking at the same time. It's like, because yeah, I mean, like everybody was used to seeing him in the big screen, and then all of a sudden it's like, no more Brandon. Like, where do you go? And then like when you read this, it's like Hollywood can be a little bit intense and cruel at the same time. But I mean, having his story out and just bring some awareness, especially during that time, it was like the whole Me Too movement, and having to know this about him, it just like it brought to light a lot of things about him as well. So, and then like you see like a lot of fans sympathize about the situation that happened, and we're like, oh, okay, why such a sweet charismatic man be treated so bad in Hollywood? But you just never know. So
I think a lot of people might have just put it down to there's up and coming stars all the time, so maybe he's just not it anymore. Maybe he's just taking on smaller independent roles, which is what he was doing. But then again, you just never know what's going on in someone's life. You just truly don't personally know. But I think he, one of his quotes is to have courage, and that's something that I heard him say in 2013, I think. Just those 2 words, and I just think, wow, he really did have courage coming forward and telling everybody about this, being so public about it. And I think it really helped a lot of people who have dealt with and who have experienced sexual assault, because it's predominantly women. I think the fact that he's a man and that he was so vocal about it, it really just kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to the fact that it can just happen to anybody. So I just think that's really brave of him, and I just applaud him so much for coming forward and doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This kind of goes in with the first question, but why Brendan Fraser for a podcast when there's so many other people that you could have done a podcast about? Why was he such a pull for both of you as two complete strangers to come together and do this?
Well, I mean, Daniel and I are pretty much the same age, and so Brandon was like the it actor in the 90s, especially. He had Encino Man, he had Blast from the Past, he had the Dazzle, Jungle, the George of the Jungle, and of course, the iconic movies, The Mummy. So he has like this entire like filmography of just like 90s movies that everybody was just drawn to during that time. So we're just like, we grew up with these movies, and I'm pretty sure everybody else around our same age group did too. So we wanted to focus on those movies and him. I mean, what do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because, I mean, I know at least for me when thinking about what to do a podcast about, Brendan, doing the topic of Brendan Fraser wasn't one to like, what's going to get the most like views or downloads, because yeah, we could have done someone that's like a Ryan Gosling or Ryan Reynolds podcast, and yeah, that'd be like currently what's as big as possible. But I think it's filmography that appeals to everybody. There's something for kids, adults, drama, comedy, action. There's not many actors that do it so well and have had a career for decades. I mean, yeah, that's really, I think it's just he appeals to everyone. There's lots to talk about.
Yes, and you were speaking about ages and stuff. So how old are you guys, if you don't mind me asking, just so I can kind of know the age range of like when you saw his movies and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, Charlotte, how old do you think? Because Charlotte accurately predicted that I'd be wearing glasses. Because we never.
Oh, really?
I don't post pictures or anything. But I knew you'd be wearing glasses.
Yeah, right. So literally 20 minutes before this interview, I was like, right, listen to the podcast. I was like, Daniel sounds like he wears glasses, but I thought you might be blonde with like spiky hair. And Carla, I don't know. And Carla, I don't know why.
That'd be terrible.
Spiky blonde hair.
But I thought, Carla, I thought you had blonde hair as well. I thought Carla sounds like she has blonde hair as well. I don't know. I don't know. Your voice sometimes reminds me of Leslie Mann. Like, seriously, sometimes on that podcast, you're so softly spoken. And I'm just like, yeah, she sounds like Leslie Mann. She must be blonde.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sorry to disappoint with not the blonde hair, Sorry.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I'm not going to guess ages because I don't want to, like, I hate doing that. But I guess what you would look like. So I was almost there.
I just turned 34, back in October.
And I just turned 35 in October as well.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because I was born the month George of the Jungle came out. I was born in 1997. Wow. So I only got that. That was my Brendan movie as a kid. My parents bought that for me and my sisters just because it was like part of the Disney video collection. So that was my first encounter with Brendan, was that movie. And then as I got older, I saw The Mummy, and I didn't have the concept of movies were made before I was born. So I was very confused. I was like, it looks really different in some of these other movies. And then my parents had to be like, no, honey, these films were made before you were born. I was like, oh, yeah. Just because on your podcast, sometimes you'll say like, oh, I was there for the premiere of like The Mummy Returns, or so I'm just like, wow, I was like 5 or something. I wasn't even aware.
No, that's crazy, because I'm definitely at the age where I feel really old. So when you talk to someone like you, Charlotte, that was born in what, 90s?
97, yeah.
97.
24.
That's like, I can't process that, because like I was like 10, watching George of the Jungle. And yeah, I mean, I guess I was born at the right time for some like amazing Brendan Fraser films. Like The Mummy Returns was so impactful, seeing it on the big screen and like waiting in line. Like no matter what new movies come out now, there's no line because like we have reserved seating. There's things streaming is very different. But in 2001, like just imagine showing up to the theater and like there's people lined up on the sidewalks, like to go see Brendan Fraser face off against The Rock. Like it was huge in 7th grade. Like this is like lunch table conversation. Like The Rock, Brendan Fraser. That's like, it was such a good time to be a fan. So
good time to be alive. I wish I could go, if I had a time machine to go back for one day. There's many days I'd like to go back to, but if I could just for that kind of experience, I'd probably go back for The Mummy Returns or George of the Jungle, just because, you know, I'd like to have at least been there. But you're right, as someone that worked in a cinema a couple of years ago, there was no like big lines waiting to get into the cinema. I think the last big film in our generation was like all the Marvel type of movies, you know, like yeah, I'm not like a big Marvel person, so I was like, what's the name of the last movie? I can't remember. Was it Infinity War? I'm not sure.
I think Infinity War and Endgame are like the top movies of all time, or Avatar's up there too. But like I just bought tickets for Spider-Man No Way Home, and those are like all sold out, which is pretty cool. But there's like when Star Wars The Force Awakens came out in 2015, there was like pre-reserved seating, at least in my area. So we were in like line, like we got there at like noon. We played like Star Wars trivia with the people next to us. Like we were dressed up. Like that was like a true movie experience. But now like with Spider-Man, I'm just going to show up at, 9 o'clock. And
your allocated time and your seat's already reserved. Yeah, I think that movies in general have lost that excitement of, well, we go to the movies and try and get a seat for that film and we'll show up like 3 hours early. Like there's none of that anymore. There's, at least in my experience working there, there's never anything like that. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple of people, but we would kind of take the mick out of them, like, why would they not book in advance? They know how busy this film's going to be. But, you don't. I haven't seen that in a long time. So I can't even imagine how exciting it must have been to go to a film like that, especially when The Rock was like, just kind of catapulted into the public eye. Especially, it must have been so exciting because I already knew who he was by the time I'd seen The Mummy. I was probably about 13 or so. So at the time watching it, I was like, I don't get what the big deal is with this guy. He's kind of like in lots already. But you guys were there when it happened, so I can't really have an opinion.
It was wild to be in 7th grade, like The Rock. Smell what The Rock is cooking. Like people were just saying that. Everyone had like the WWF or WCW t-shirts. Like I was not into wrestling, but I was into The Mummy. But The Rock was just, it was kind of crazy. There's like a perfect storm, the combination of a Mummy film and The Rock showing up.
Could you guys maybe tell me what your favorite Brendan Fraser film is and why?
Oh God, that's a tough one.
I know.
I don't think I can pinpoint just one though. It would be like it has to be like a list of favorites, I would say. But I guess if there's a movie that I would watch over and over again, would be probably Blast from the Past. That one, the little rom-com, my favorite. One of my favorites from him. Yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's tough, but probably The Mummy Returns, more for like, I've seen it so many times, good memories associated with it, but it's tough because the first Mummy, I think, is a better film.
The Mummy Returns, for me, is my favourite of the two, but my boyfriend Cameron said, he's like, that, are you crazy? The first one is like, it's so much better. It's so much more exciting. It's the first time this kind of stuff's happened. The score is amazing. It's so funny. I was like, yeah, but now they're a family. Now they have a child. And he's like, oh, God. I'm like, yeah, but look how much more comfortable she is. And look how much more badass she is. And he has something to fight for. And I think that's the appeal for me, is just like that kind of family ties kind of side to that film. I think that's why I prefer it over the first one, even though the first one is a masterpiece in my opinion.
I agree. I can say masterpiece. Like the first one, I could hold up with like an Indiana Jones film. Like it's that well made, and the dialogue. There are so many quotable lines in that film. Like any scene, you're gonna find a quote that like you've heard or you want to quote.
Hey! O'Connell! It looks to me like I've got all the horses!
Hey, Benny! Looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river!
But the second one, they need a little bit more time to work on it. But so I would say my favorite's Mummy Returns, but The Mummy, the first one, is a close second.